So today's discussion is going to be talking about incentives and stuff like that. So I'll let you know if it's a paid endorsement if you guys give me all 10. So we'll talk about what your prize will be at the end. As they told you, my name is Rachel Hirsch. I'm an attorney at the Washington, D.C. based law firm of Ifrah, PLLC, Ifrah Law. We are conveniently located next to the White House, or this week, inconveniently located next to the White House. We are a boutique law firm. We're about 7.5 years old, and we are a mix of former big law and government attorneys, and our goal is to provide excellent service, hands-on counsel to our clients. Our main practice area is, of course, FTC defense, whether it's in litigation or day-to-day compliance work. So as an attorney, I'm asked all the time, what can I say in my advertisements that's going to keep me out of trouble? Are there magic words that I can use that will get the FTC off my back? So we're going to look at some of those magic words, and I'm going to have a list of top 5 areas where magic words are important. And these are the area of endorsements. Now, the FTC has endorsement guidelines, and they've updated them in the last few years. And they're basically geared toward what would a consumer want to know about your product before they buy it. For instance, would someone else's recommendation about your product influence how they decide to buy it? So let's say you have a celebrity who is tweeting about your product, or you have product placement on TV. Would those influencers be a factor in your decision-making of whether or not to purchase the advertisement? And so what the FTC guidelines are geared toward is making sure that there's truth in advertising, that your advertising is honest and not misleading. So how do you do that? You do that through revealing the connection between the endorser and the marketer. So if you are endorsing a product, whether you're an employee, a celebrity, a blogger, or simply an affiliate, have you disclose your connection to the advertiser in such a way that the consumer can make an informed decision about buying the product? Now, these guidelines apply to any medium of communication, whether it's social media, mobile, tweets, anything that you're doing, these guidelines apply. Now, the guides are not, they're not supported by the force of law, meaning they're not laws. All they're set to do are give you a guideline, give you a guidepost for how the FTC thinks about various marketing activities and how Section 5, which is part of the FTC Act governing misleading and dishonest advertising, would apply in certain situations. So basically, they're examples. What if I'm doing this? How would the guidelines apply? They're not law, they're not codified in law, but they're meant to be a guidepost for you in the future. And the test to whether your disclaimers that we're going to talk about are sufficient under the FTC guidelines is whether the significant minority would not be misled or would be misled by the lack of a disclosure. So that's a different kind of test. They're not looking at, are a majority of people going to understand that you are selling a product or endorsing a product? The FTC looks at the significant minority. So it's a much harder test than you would have otherwise. So you have to make sure that the minority of people, significant minority of people, would not be misled by your disclosures. So the very first kind of disclaimer we have is the typical consumer experience. And generally we see this in the nutraceutical kind of ads, the diet, health, and beauty. What is the typical consumer going to expect to achieve in using your product? Back in the day, it was sufficient to say your results may vary, or individual results may vary, or results not typical. But that's not enough anymore. What they need you to do now is make sure that someone who's viewing your ad, let's say it's a diet ad, the typical diet ads, can understand as a consumer what results they can generally achieve in using your product. So for example, the ad says, I can lose 50 pounds in 2 months. Is that what the typical or average consumer can expect to achieve? If it's not, then you need to include a disclosure. And the disclosure would say something to the effect of what we have down there. Most women who use X product, let's say it's green coffee bean, can expect to lose X amount of pounds in X months. Now, how do you get that disclaimer? What information do you need to have to be able to make that kind of disclaimer? Well, you have to tally your consumer experiences. You have to understand what results your consumers are actually experiencing. So let's say the typical consumer only loses 10 pounds in 2 months. Well, if that's the case, then you need to make sure it's very clear that even though you're claiming that you can lose 50 pounds in 2 months, that the typical consumer knows that's not going to be the case for them. The 50 pounds in 2 months is an outlier. It's what, the best case scenario is. But for the average Joe Schmo, Jane Doe, they're going to be able to lose 10 pounds in a month. Now, I just want to preface this by saying, I just want to make a note on this and saying, even though you have consumer experiences that can substantiate the weight loss of that your product offers, that's not enough. So you can't base for every claim that you make under the FTC guidelines, you need to have substantiation. This is especially true in the diet and skin space, right? Especially when you're claiming weight loss, you need to be able to have sufficient, adequate scientific proof to back up your claims before you even make them. So what does that mean? Before you even market your product, you have to have science that backs up the claims that you're making. So you cannot rely on consumer experiences that happen after you market your product to substantiate your claims. You have to have that substantiation first. So even if you include this disclaimer and tell people what experiences your consumers are having, that is not enough to substantiate any kind of health-related claims that you're making. What happens if you have consumer experiences that date back 3 years ago? Let's say you have testimonials, right? And those are the newest ones you have are only from 3 years ago. How do you get the generally expected results? How do you make that kind of disclosure? Well, the first thing you have to determine is whether those testimonials, whether those endorsements are still current, right? Are those people still using the product? Because if they're not continuing to use the product, you can't really be using their testimonials anymore. The second thing you have to determine is whether the claims are still accurate. Are they still experiencing that type of weight loss, for instance, in using your product? And if all that is true, that they're still accurate, they're still using your product, then you can probably rely safely on old testimonials to get your generally expected results. So that's the first type of disclaimer that we typically see. The second one we typically see are expert endorsements. And expert endorsements can come in the form of anything from a doctor opining about something or an expert in the field, whether it's a TV personality who's an expert in something. We're not going to say Dr. Oz, he's an expert in nothing, but let's assume it's Dr. Oz, right? So, and I use the term doctor very loosely when I talk about Dr. Oz. So when you have expert endorsements, you have to disclose whether that expert is compensated. Even if they're a reputable medical doctor in their field, if they're getting paid for the opinions that they are expressing, you need to disclose that fact. The second thing you have to be very careful of when it comes to experts such as doctors are what are their credentials to be making those opinions? Let's say, for instance, let's go back to the diet ad. Let's say you have a psychiatrist who is quoted in your ad as saying, this product is great, it helps people lose weight. Well, I'm sorry, even though a psychiatrist went to medical school, he or she does not have the credentials to be making those kinds of claims. Rather, you need someone who is experienced in that field to be providing expert opinions. So a nutritionist, a dietitian, someone who has a medical degree, a general practitioner. Those are the types of people you would need to have as expert support. Again, going back to the adequate scientific support, it's not enough just to have the doctor telling your consumers that this product is great. Is there science to back it up? The problem with the green coffee bean, the raspberry ketone, is that Dr. Oz, who claims to be a doctor, has told people these things work great. And then everyone thought, wow, this is a great idea. Let me start marketing these products and I'll put Dr. Oz's face on it. And he said, whoa, 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 I didn't mean that your product was great. I was just saying something on TV. You have to have adequate scientific support for your claims. Well, if you're a doctor and you're making those representations, people are going to reasonably rely on that. And that's what happened in the Dr. Oz phenomenon, which is people thought this is a great marketing tool. Well, Dr. Oz is saying it's great. He's saying you're going to lose weight. Let me start using him in my advertisements. And that became an issue. We also talked about the area of expertise, making sure you qualify what they're limited to making an opinion on. So for example, the disclaimer that you would have there is, this is a board-certified doctor qualified to opine on issues relating to X. Oh, that guy did not like my speech. So whatever it could be, it could be relating to muscle, skin, testosterone, whatever it is you're selling at the time. That's what you would have to find someone who's specialized in that field to be making those claims. Then we have affiliate disclosures. Affiliate disclosures are, who here is an affiliate? Do we have affiliates in this room? So an affiliate disclosure is actually pretty simple. It's disclosing the fact that there is a link between you as the site creator and the online retailer or the person that you're sending the traffic to, right? So let's say you have a landing page, right? That's redirecting sales to a sales page belonging to an advertiser. In that sense, you would need to have a disclosure letting people know that you are getting paid for sending traffic to or sending sales to the advertiser. It's very simple. There are no real magic words that go along with it. You just have to say in very simple terms, something like, I get commissions for purchases made through this link. You don't have to put legalese in it. You can word it however you want. It just needs to be clear to the reader that there is a financial connection between you and let's say the online retailer that you're promoting, so that the consumer can decide for himself or herself how much weight to give to your endorsement, right? So it used to be back in the day, we saw landing pages that looked like paid news, but looked like news advertisement, like news pages, right? The fake news sites that were looking like they were evaluating a product. Well, the FCC said, no, you can't have those kind of sites anymore because it's not clear that these landing pages are really meant to promote sales, and they're not really news sites, and they're not independent reviews. So the way that's remedied in part is by having this affiliate disclosure. So let's say you have a landing page that says on top, paid advertisement, or let's say it's very clear that it is a paid advertisement. If that's the case, would you still need an affiliate disclosure? Well, the question is, what would the reasonable consumer understand from reading your page? If it's clear that it's a paid advertisement, like you have the words paid advertisement on top, then probably don't need a disclosure along with it. Let's say it's very clear that without using the words paid advertisement, that this is a paid advertisement, and it's questionable whether it's clear without having those words there, then in that case, you may not need an affiliate disclosure. But they're so simple to put together and they're so simple to include that there's no reason not to include it. Now, what I've seen people do is try to put them in links, put them on the general information page or the About Us page and have them hidden somewhere. Or like you have to scroll all the way down the page and read through a million disclaimers to figure out that this is actually a paid advertisement. That's a no-no. You can't use links or buttons or, hide the words in font that people can't read or can't see. It has to be very clear, it has to be very conspicuous, and it has to be as early on in the advertisement as you can place it, because the proximity to the claims you're making and the placement is equally important. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So don't hide it, make it clear that you're getting paid for this, and say it in words that are understandable. The words you choose are your own, but as long as a reasonable consumer understands, you've done your job. Okay, so this is my favorite page because I'm going to talk about the most infamous TV family, the Kardashians. Before I get to this, I just want to talk about paid endorsements in general. Paid endorsements can come in various forms. I talked about earlier a little bit, I referenced product placement. So the interesting thing about product placement is that the FCC, not the FTC, has actually taken the position that TV stations need to include disclosures of product placement on TV. The FTC the staff attorneys there have actually taken the position that mere product placement does not require disclosures. How many of you know that sometimes when you watch reruns of shows, there will be product placement in those reruns that did not appear in the original episode? Did anyone here know that? It's a way for them to get more advertisements out there. So compare and contrast, let's say, an old Seinfeld episode that originally aired versus a rerun. Sometimes you're going to see product placement in there that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise. So on this one, the FTC is like, no disclosure needed. You may have paid endorsements on TV or radio and other formats. If you're listening to the morning talk show on the radio, sometimes you hear, when I get up in the morning, I drink a big cup of Joe from Folgers. That's a paid advertisement. Most people know it's a paid advertisement because it's always awkward and weird. Like they'll be talking about celebrity gossip and then suddenly he'll be switching to, I just drink, if you want to get your tires rotated, go to Mr. Tires. It's very abrupt and weird, and most people know that that's a product placement, so they don't require disclosures in that context. The other kind of product placements we see are often through, celebrities or athletes or well-known people promoting a product. So the first thing you have to know about paid endorsements is if the product is free and you're not getting paid to promote the product, you don't need to have a disclosure. But what if you're just, showing the product and not saying anything about it, right? And this is where we're going to get into my favorite TV family. So there is one of the Kardashians, Kourtney Kardashian, claimed that she became a brand ambassador to this, I think it was a skincare line, because she always posted pictures of herself putting honey on her skin. And because this product has honey on it, they decided they're going to make her a brand ambassador. So putting honey on your skin is obviously not promoting a product, but once she started promoting the product, if she just put the product on her skin without saying more, in that instance, she would have to disclose that she is a paid endorser. Now, sometimes the endorsement is obvious, and I believe that in the case of the Kardashians, it is very clear that they're endorsing a product. Why? Because they're not going to post anything to Instagram or Snapchat other than selfies if it's not going to get them paid, right? So most of the time, you're going to see them with a product in their hand, and you're going to understand that they are selling it. In those instances, a disclosure is not required. If it's very obvious to their followers or people who are just viewing their social media posts that they're getting paid, then a disclosure is not needed. I think that for the Kardashians, it's obvious. And there's actually, and I bring this up because there was a consumer watchdog group that was suing them, saying that they did not disclose that they were being paid for certain endorsements. And I just thought that was laughable because everyone knows that these people, the only way they make money, they have no other marketable talents, is by putting things on their pages and getting paid for it. We have this issue, the Kardashian effect, as I call it, has kind of moved on to the housewife effect. Has anyone seen those Instagram posts for Diff eyewear? Does anyone know what that is? Those sunglasses, they have like different colored lenses. You see every like Bravo celebrity, as I'll call them, with those images on their pages. In those cases, it's pretty obvious that they're also promoting the product because they're saying, go to this and you'll get 20% off and just put in my name and put in this code. In that case, it's pretty obvious, right? And you probably don't need to have a disclosure saying that they're promoting the product. I did actually see, randomly, a Real Housewife who did actually put hashtag ad at the end of her post for the Diff eyewear product. And she happens to be a lawyer, so she understood that it's probably best to disclose your relationship with the advertiser of the product to be safe. The biggest thing with endorsers is, do they actually use the product? So going back to the eyewear issue, how many of these celebrities are actually wearing these cheap sunglasses on a daily basis? They're just putting them on, taking a snap of themselves and taking it off. They're wearing their Gucci lenses or Louis Vuittons any other day of the week. In that sense, if your endorser is not actually using the product, you can't use them as an endorser. So if there is a financial connection between the endorser and the advertiser, it has to be disclosed. And at the end of the day, it's the advertiser's responsibility to know what's being said about their product. So they are responsible for making sure that whoever's endorsing their product, that they're giving them the objective claims that they can make. So if, for instance, if it's a Nutra or health and diet advertiser, are they providing their endorsers, their affiliates or celebrities with the right health claims that they can be making about the product? They should also, as an advertiser, should also tell people in your network what their responsibilities are in disclosing the financial connection they have with you. Advertisers also are required under the FTC guidelines to periodically search for what people are saying about their product. So you can't just say, well, I used a PR firm and they're, having all these celebrities tweet about me or they're having consumers say these things about me. you are responsible, even if you farm that work out, to make sure that only substantiated claims are being made about your product. And if you find that there aren't claims out there that are substantiated, or that people are saying things without disclosing a financial connection, it's your job to follow up on that and to make sure that you stop those questionable practices. The most important thing about endorsements that you have to realize are two things. One is you can't talk about your experience with a product if you haven't actually tried it. I know that sounds simple, but you can't say this product is great if you didn't actually use it. Second, seems kind of obvious, if you tried a product and thought it was terrible, you can't say it was terrific. So you have to be honest, and you have to be forthright in what you say about your product claims, and you actually have to use the product. Disclaimer number 5, so social media. If you're having people enter into contests or sweepstakes on social media, how do you disclose that? There was a case a couple years ago where the FTC sent a letter out to Cole Haan because they said, take a picture of yourself walking in Cole Haan shoes and you'll be entered into a sweepstakes and post it on social media. So people did that, but they didn't disclose that they were doing this as an incentive. They were getting an incentive to post their Instagram photos. And the FTC said to them, you need to make sure that when consumers are posting their Instagram photos of your product, that it's clear that this is a paid endorsement. And what does it mean? They're not getting money for it, but they're getting an incentive. Even if they're getting a coupon in the mail or they're getting entered into a promotion, that's considered a paid endorsement. So if you're having your consumers or customers or clients or whoever do these kind of contests and sweepstakes, make sure that they are disclosing through hashtags or whatever that this is a contest and this is a sweepstakes. For instance, so if they're reasonably expecting to get paid as a result of this, there's more of an incentive for them to disclose that they're being entered into a paid advertisement. There's an issue with incentivizing likes. So with Facebook, people can buy likes. The FTC is actually not really taking a firm position on this because it's questionable how much weight people actually give to likes. So they're not saying right now that you need to disclose the fact that you're paying for likes because it's not clear. Once they have more information on how much consumers put stock into likes, they'll probably revise their guidelines to that effect. But for right now, the no disclosures are required at the moment. So if you're having a social media endorsement, make sure it's clear that you're disclaiming that you're being paid for your endorsement. So now I've told you the top 5, and as you saw from the title of the presentation, you were waiting to see what number 6 was. Number 6 was, this presentation was not intended to be legal advice and should not be treated as such. Why? Because disclaimers by themselves are not enough. You need a qualified attorney to tell you how you should be managing your pages, how you should be compliant in your advertisements. For instance, we were talking about the doctor example. What if you just have a picture of somebody in a lab coat on your page and you don't say anything else about it? Well, guess what? The net impression that a person walks away from that ad is that someone in the medical field supports your claims. And that is not, that you can't include someone in a lab coat without having a disclosure. And you can't include someone in a lab coat if you don't have anyone in a lab coat who supports your claims. So these are all the kind of things, the nuances, that as a marketer you may not realize because the guidelines just give you examples. They don't give you laws. So what you need is a qualified attorney who's going to tell you how the guidelines are interpreted in real life, everyday cases that the FTC brings. So number 6, were you happy that you waited to get to number 6? I see some smiles. See, I try to use some of the gimmicks I see here. I'm going to take questions in 1 second. Some of the gimmicks I see here to get people excited about my speech. So just remember, if you're going to make disclosures, don't use links. Make sure you place disclosures in where it's appropriate as soon as you make the claim. Make sure that the disclosure is noticeable, that's not like in a shaded box and not in font that people can't read. Make sure it's understandable. If you're marketing to a Spanish-speaking audience, don't put your disclosure in English. Put it in Spanish. Don't just put like a notation hashtag ad if it's not enough to understand from that that's a disclosure. Make sure you're conveying the financial connection you have with the advertiser. The medium does not change the requirements to disclose. So even if you're on mobile and you have limited space or you're tweeting and you have limited characters, you need to disclose. If there's not enough room, the FTC says don't make the claim to begin with. And that's the character limit issue that we have there. And I just sped through that because I have a 5-minute heads up, and I want to take questions. Do you want to go to the microphone so that everyone can hear you, or I can repeat your question if you like?
It's just about the lab coat. So I've seen where somebody who has a PhD wears a lab coat and is talking about like nutritional information. How would that go? They're not a doctor, but they're a doctor in the sense of PhD, but they're trying to put themselves out there as a medical doctor.
Right. So the question was, what if the lab coat example I gave, what if you have someone who's pictured in a lab coat, has a PhD, and is making healthcare claims about a product? And calling themselves doctors. So PhDs would take the position that they are doctors, but they are not medical doctors. So we don't want to insult them by saying they're not doctors. But in that case, you would need a disclosure. And if you think about it, what's the point of having a disclosure saying this person's not qualified to be making medical claims? I mean, that just that's completely kills your ad to begin with. Best rule of thumb, don't include them to begin with. Have other scientific support to back up your claims. So you would need a disclosure there saying that they're not qualified to make opinions in this area. And once you make that disclosure, what's the point, right, of saying that to begin with? Because if you're doing the disclosure clearly and it's conspicuous and it's where it's supposed to be and not embedded in some link somewhere, then people are going to see it and they're not going to put much stock into what that person is saying about the product, right? So when you look at an ad from an FTC perspective, you're looking at the overall net impression of the ad, not so much what you say, but what you don't say as well. So when you have images like a lab coat without any words, that's enough to convey to somebody that, oh, someone with some sort of degree, probably in medicine, is making an opinion about this. So I'm going to put more trust in this product than I would have otherwise. So yeah, it could be problematic. Yes?
We had an event where we took a lot of pictures with celebrities with our product. We didn't necessarily pay them for that, but they took pictures and they used it, they liked it. Can we use that on our website?
I'll tell you no, because Jennifer Love Hewitt sued one of my clients for the exact same thing. My client was the media distributor. The product was something that was featured on Shark Tank. And they went to a celebrity gifting suite and they were picking up products. And they had the rights to the photos. You may have the rights to the photos, but you do not have the right to use a celebrity in your advertisements unless they give you permission to do so. And there's publicity rights laws, like in California, which prevent people from using images of celebrities unless they've given them permission to use them in an advertisement.
So we have to get explicit written permission from them.
Yes, and you probably have to pay her. In Jennifer Love Hewitt's case, her going rate's like $1 million, if you can believe that. She's like a D-list celebrity. So yes, so yeah, don't do that. Okay. I just had settled a case like that last year on that same issue. So even if you have rights to the photo in the gifting suite, you do not have rights to use a celebrity in endorsing your product.
What do we do with the photos are worthless? Or
are the photos worthless? Yeah. You can say you had a gifting suite where your products were featured, but not make any claims about the celebrities endorsing your product. You'd have to have a disclosure there. But even then, the photos are probably useless.
So can't use them for anything. Just don't put them on the site.
I wouldn't, because it would probably convey to somebody that celebrity is using your product and endorses it.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. If you're a celebrity who's desperate for money, I'm sure that you have people who are trolling the sites to see if you can make some money, a quick buck. I don't know if it's that. So the question is, do celebrities go to these gifting suites, take pictures of these products, knowing that the person selling the product is probably going to use their image without their permission, then sue them? I don't know if people are as devious as that, but there are plenty, like Mario Lopez sues people all the time. I saw something about, I think it was Martha Stewart sued. I mean, it depends on the celebrity. If it's like a Taylor Swift celebrity, then yes, believe me, they're going to sue you. Sometimes the photographer gets a release from them, and in this case, the photographer claimed they had a release that they can use these images, but it wasn't airtight. It just depends on the situation. But yeah, I mean, there are celebrities who do troll, and I definitely have clients who've gotten, cease and desist letters from celebrities saying, take my image down, you're going to have to pay my going rate for using my image. There's a case with Michael Jordan where they just used his shadow, and because his shadow was so prominent, he got it wasn't like a everyday advertiser you see here, but it was like another big brand that was using it, and he got like millions of dollars off of that because they use it without his permission. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead. Good question. I know our time's up. I'm just going to answer this last question. So the question was, the FTC guidelines seem kind of vague. Is there a site you can see where their enforcement actions have been in the past? So the FTC issues press releases for every enforcement action they bring, even if it's like a settlement of a CID or a new lawsuit that they're bringing. And when they settle a lawsuit, they'll also have a press release for that. So just when you thought you were done and settled a lawsuit, they'll have a press release saying, we got those scam artists. And they always like to say scheme and fraudulent and scam artists. So don't feel bad if that happens to you. They call everybody that. And if you have a Porsche, every one of my FTC cases involved a Porsche. They definitely hate you because those FTC lawyers only drive Hondas. So don't have a Porsche. But yeah, they have you can read the permanent injunction orders that come out. Those are usually used by the FTC as precedent moving forward. Like there was an affiliate network that had a settlement earlier this year and about how to make billing disclosures. And that's probably how the FTC is going to look at other affiliate networks in the future and other advertisers in the future when they do billing, have billing issues as well. So yeah, they do issue orders and they legislate and through those orders, even though most people just settle because they can't afford to pay for attorneys. And it's really not fair that their case should be used as precedent, but that's what we have in most of these cases. I think we're out of time, but I'm available to answer questions after. Thank you for attending. Feel free to come by the Ifrah Law Power Station, and we're right around the corner from the meat market on the exhibit hall side, and I'm happy to answer any more questions then. Thanks so much, everyone.